Second dependent clause type, adverb clauses. Adverb clauses are clauses that provide information about the verb in the main clause. In other words, they modify the verb of the main clause in terms of time, place, result, cause, purpose, condition, contrast, concession, and manner. Before I start introducing these 9 groups of adverb clause conjunctions, I need to tell you how to punctuate adverb clauses. Please note that the adverb clause is the one that begins with the conjunction. See this example. Because the rate of overdose death is increasing sharply, many activists are calling on the government to set up safe injection sites. In this example, because the rate of overdose death is increasing sharply is the adverb clause. Also, please note that you need a comma after the adverb clause when it is used before the main clause. However, if the adverb clause follows the main clause, no comma is needed. Many activists are calling on the government to set up safe injection sites because the rate of overdose death is increasing sharply. There are 2 exceptions to this general punctuation rule, which I will discuss later. As I said earlier, adverb clause conjunctions can be classified into 9 different categories. Time. The most common conjunctions for time are when, whenever, after, before, while, by the time, as soon as, until, since, and as long as. Here is an example for whenever. Whenever people cast their ballots in a democracy, they show their trust in their democratic institutions. Please note a comma has been used after the adverb clause, but if you flip the 2 clauses, you will not need the comma. People show their trust in their democratic institutions whenever they cast their ballots in a democracy. Place. The main conjunctions for place are where, wherever, everywhere, and anywhere. People must have access to subsidized childcare services anywhere they live in the country. In the sentence, anywhere they live in the country is the adverb clause and shows where women must have access to subsidized childcare services. Reason. The main conjunctions for reason are because, since, and as. Since mentally ill patients may suffer unbearable pain, some activists are urging the government to provide medical assistance in dying to such patients as well. Since and as mean because, so they can be simply used instead of because in the sentence. Result. The main conjunctions for result are so, that, and such, that. The pain that some terminally ill patients have to suffer is so unbearable that they may decide to apply for medical assistance in dying. In this sentence, the adverb clause is that they may decide to apply for medical assistance in dying. As you can see, the patient's decision to apply for medical assistance in dying is the result of their unbearable pain. Please note, while we use an adjective or an adverb after so, we need to use a noun phrase after such. See this example. Some terminally ill patients experience such unbearable pain that they may decide to apply for medical assistance in dying. Purpose. The main conjunctions for purpose are so that, and in order that. The government legalized medical assistance in dying so that terminally ill patients would not have to suffer unbearable physical and mental pain. Please note that in the adverb clause of purpose, there's always some sort of modal verb, such as can, could, will, or would, depending on the context. Condition. The main conjunctions for condition are if, unless, and provided that. Here is an example for if. Terminally ill patients can apply for medical assistance in dying if they experience unbearable physical or mental pain. Here is an example for provided that. Patients can apply for medical assistance in dying provided that they are suffering from an irremediable illness. Please note, regardless of where the adverb clause is located, you always need a comma between the adverb clause and the main clause when you use provided that. But this is not the case with if or unless. Contrast. The main conjunctions for contrast are while and whereas. While in a dictatorship, people are taught what to think, in a democracy, people are taught how to think. Please note the punctuation of contrast conjunctions. You need to use a comma between the adverb clause and the main clause regardless of their sequence. So, if you switch the two clauses around, you still need the comma. Concession. The main conjunctions for concession are although, even though, and though. Although the neighborhood has been designated as a community safety zone, the number of traffic offenders in the area has not declined significantly. Please note the difference between contrast and concession. We use concession when there is an element of surprise. For instance, in the above sentence, once an area, such as areas near schools, is designated as a community safety zone, we expect drivers to drive more carefully. Therefore, when we find out the rate of traffic violations has not dropped significantly, we may feel surprised. Manner. The main conjunctions for manner are as if, and as though. See this example. Some people behave as though, or as if, they have never seen or heard about the impacts of climate change.